Hey everybody, coming to you from my kitchen. I've already had a couple questions about the research paper. Sometimes when I get questions, I think, well, I'll just go back and take a look at the information I've given you and see if I think it's clear enough. And I decided I would do this. So hopefully this will be clearer, give you a little bit of an overview, and also break the paper down into its parts and explain each of them individually. Then you have this video and you can go back and stop wherever you need to stop and look at what I'm giving you and listen to me again if you need help. Of course, you can always feel free to ask questions in the Q&A discussion board or by email or get me on the line for cyber office hours, but let's see if I can't at least get everybody started. All right, and before I do get started, I just want to say for any of you who are noticing it, yes, it's ponytail day. My daughter just told me that I should not be creating videos for my students with a ponytail on because it just shows that I am a holdover from the 80s. I just want to start by owning that straight up. I'm a holdover from the 80s. If you, like my daughter, have any comments, feel free to put them in the comments section of Canvas. Now let's get going. Okay, so normally you would find your materials through the modules, and you can. But if you don't want to fish through the modules, let me give you this quick way to get to where you need to go. On the left-hand side of our Canvas classroom, you see this little link, assignments. If you click on this link, this is what will show up. These are the first few assignments that show up when you click the link. They're not in any particular order. If you scroll all the way down, you will come to a group that is called Research Paper, which you can see up here. And then these are all the pieces of the research paper. So let's just go through them one at a time and I will explain them. All right, so hopefully all of you have already signed up for the research paper, but if I had to bet $1, I would bet that there are at least a few of you who did not make it to this or skipped it somehow. So if that's the case, this is like a Wikipedia thing, and you can just take this link, sign up for the research paper. Up at the top right hand, which you can't see on this screenshot that I have, it says edit. Click the edit and then you'll be able to scroll down and look for the subject matter. By this time there's only 2 per topic, so by this time you don't have that many choices. If you don't like any of the choices you have, you are free to come up with your own idea, but you must pass it by me in an email and put it down in one of the bottom empty boxes or next to somebody else's something so that, oops, I'm a little rushed here, so that you are signed up for your paper topic and somebody can sign up to critique you as well. Okay, so after signing up for the research paper, we're going to go to creating your research plan. That is the first thing due. I want to make sure everybody knows what a research plan is. Your research plan, it's very simple. Your plan for me, for this assignment, is just turning in the research questions that you are going to ask and, oops, again, I'm a little ahead of myself here. I'm not sure why this is jumping. And your source bibliography. Now let me talk about why I'm asking you to come up with research questions. You already have a topic, right? So in high school, most students tend to take their topic, whatever it is, and just throw it up in Google and see what comes up, and then scroll through the first 5 or 10 things that come up and pick a few, read them, and then write their paper. I want us to be much more intentional than that. Why? Well, first of all, the reason that the first 10 things shot up on Google may have nothing to do with writing a research paper, and they may or may not be the best sources. Also, I want your paper to conform to what your true interest is in your topic. You pick the topic out of all the topics because it appealed to you for some reason, and if you think about your topic, you're going to have some things that you're interested in particular, and that's what I want you to research, not just what pops up. A good research plan, the researcher decides what they're going to research. We don't let Google decide that for us, okay? All right, so I am going to, for the sake of just this video, I'm going to pretend like my subject matter is about volunteer coaches for kids sports. I don't even know if that's a topic up on the board, but that's what I'm going to use, and I'm going to show you how I develop my my pieces of my research plan, and then do my my research itself, develop my research, and then put it into a literature review, and eventually finish the report. Shall we go? All right. So when you are, oops, sorry, it's driving me crazy. When you are coming up with your questions, I want you to ask yourself, what are you personally interested in about your topic? And then when you figure out what you're interested in, frame it as a question. I have come up with 3 questions that I am interested in learning about for my paper topic, which is volunteers coaching kids after school sports or kids sports or whatever. Okay, here are my things that I'm interested in. What kind of training do coaches need to successfully work with kids? I'm wondering if coaches need special training to work with kids that they might not need to have if they were working with, you know, like college age adults or something. My second question is, how do coaches impact the lives of kids on the team beyond the sport? Because it seems to me that I hear that they do, and I'm wondering how impactful that is, and I'm also wondering what it is that coaches need to be careful about if they have so much impact. And then finally, my last question is, how can an organization ensure that volunteer coaches are safe adults? And I think my interest in that comes from learning a couple years ago about the coaches that were actually sexually assaulting young female gymnasts. And that bothers me, and I'm wondering how organizations that bring in volunteer coaches can make sure that that doesn't happen. So these are the 3 things I'm really interested in. Now, instead of just throwing into my search box, whether it's Google or the ASU library or wherever, instead of just throwing in volunteer coaches for kids sports, I can actually throw in these questions or the key phrases from these questions. So let's see what happens. Let's talk about what kind of research we're going to do and how we go about finding the information we need to answer these questions. Okay, so the first kind of, oops, sorry, this thing keeps jumping. The first kind of information we need are secondary sources. If you can, I don't know if you can see, sorry. Secondary sources are already written up. They're articles, books, news, websites that somebody else had similar questions to you, and for whatever reason, they wrote it up. It could be an academic article because somebody was studying it, and you can see this. I went on to Google Scholar, and you can see at the top here that I plugged in volunteers, coaching, impact, kids, team sports. Just some key terms that should get me this. And these are the first things that came up. There was actually a whole page of them. As you can see, I got 30,500 results. And I can fish through them for anything that sounds interesting to me or like it might answer one of my questions. I also was able to find a book, 101 Things Parents Should Know Before Volunteering to Coach Their Kids' Sports. Actually, I found several books. I just plopped that one down here. I found a Special Olympics article about volunteers as coaches. And this Aspen Institute Project Play website that was Why Good Coaches Matter. And these are all secondary sources. Somebody who's had an interest that it was at least similar or related to what I'm interested in, who has already written it up. Secondary sources are people who have already done some research on their own and written stuff up. So you need to do that kind of research, which is just looking for articles and books and special information that's already been put together that will help you. The other thing that I'm going to ask you to do is have at least one primary source of research. A primary source is data you collect, data you collect yourself. It could be an interview, so you could go out and interview a volunteer coach or an organization, a volunteer manager for an organization that recruits volunteer coaches. You could bring together a group of parents to talk about coaches and their kids. That might be a focus group. You could go out and watch coaches and parents and kids interacting, and that would be an observation. And you can also sometimes find data, not things already written or, documentaries already put together on this subject, but maybe like a coach's training manual that that Special Olympics use or something like that. That was not written to answer these questions. It was written for a different purpose, and so it's also a primary source. So again, you're looking to decide, what do you want to know? These are you can see I still got my 3 questions down there. And who might I talk to who might be able to give me some additional information on those? So now you know that you will be collecting secondary sources, already written stuff, and primary sources, which are your own observations or information you've collected from a real person. Once you have gotten those sources, even before you read them, you're going to create a bibliography for me, and that's going to be your plan. Remember, your questions plus your list of sources, your bibliography, that is your research plan. So what is in front of you is basically, this is a sample bibliography. I literally just picked it up and took it off of my NLM 220 nonprofit organizations class syllabus, so you could see what a bibliography looks like. I'm pretty sure most of you know, but just in case. The red web address, seriously, I didn't even touch it. The red web address is an address you can go if you're not sure how to format your bibliography. There are multiple ways to format a bibliography. Personally, I use APA, which is why I gave you this link, but you don't have to use it. As long as you are using any standardized bibliography form, I am fine with that as long as you are consistent about how you use it throughout your report. Okay, so it says all your sources need to be cited, secondary and primary alike. If you do not know how to cite a web page or how to cite a YouTube video or how to cite an interview, a personal interview, then Google it. How do you cite a personal interview? I promise you it will work. Okay.
According to EasyBib, instead of...
Sorry, I said Google and my phone came alive. Okay, remember your research plan. The only thing you have to give me are your list of questions, like those 3 questions I showed you, and your list of readings and your idea for your primary research that you are planning to do. So whatever your readings are that you found, your secondary sources, plus if you decided to go talk to a coach or go observe or whatever, you're going to put those sources in a bibliography along with your research questions and turn them in. Okay? Let's move forward. Next thing after your research plan is to actually start doing your research. Or in the case of your secondary sources, reading the articles you found. Oh, for crying out loud. Reading the articles you found and getting out there and doing whatever primary research you decided to do, whether it was an observation or an interview or whatever it is you decided. And remember, the way you decide what your primary research is the same way that you decide about your secondary. Where am I going to be able to best find the information that answers my questions? Okay, so first, once you have done your reading, we're going to do we're going to use the secondary literature that you found. In other words, all of the things that you found that were already written or put together for you, and we're going to put them into a literature review. A lot of students don't know what a literature review is, and there's a whole article on this that is in your modules for you in that assignment material, but I'm just going to really quickly go through it. What is a literature review and why do we do one? Okay, so you found 8 articles or whatever. What a literature review does is it takes the information in those articles and it gives you a chance to actually look at the articles and decide, what did I just read that was important? I'm going to write something about that. And what did I read that wasn't relevant? I'm going to throw that out. So you might have found 8 articles and end up only using 4 or 5 of them, all right? And then the ones that are valuable, you're going to synthesize the information in them as a starting point of your article, okay? Now, a synthesis, I'm going to talk about what that is. It is not a list of your sources and a little description of what they say. It is not that. That is called an annotation, when you just list your sources and you tell me what they said. That is not what I want. What I want you to be doing as you are reading through your sources, and this will happen kind of naturally, is I want you to identify ideas that come up over and over again. In other words, themes in the literature. And when you hear a theme, then you know that that is something that most people that you're talking to are kind of interested in, worried about, agree upon, whatever. And then also know if the authors say something that's not part of a theme, but is really interesting and on point for your questions, and you want to capture those ideas. So that's what you're going to be looking for when you're reading. Ideas that come up over and over again, themes that come up over and over again in the readings that you picked, and then interesting ideas that seem relevant to your questions. Now, why are we looking for just this information and writing it up into a literature review? The why is important. First of all, I want to make sure that the people who read your report, meaning me and whoever of your classmates critiques it, have the same background information that you do, so that it helps them make sense of everything else in the paper. And second, I don't want you to just write stuff without it being grounded in reality. So the themes and information that you find over and over again are pretty much what people seem to be agreeing about, or sometimes there's an argument about those things, but then the argument is worth talking about. You want to start your paper from what is already known. And so you are going to collect this little bit of knowledge by doing your literature review, and you're going to write it up so that everybody starts on the same page with information, and then you will go ahead and write your paper. Okay, so how do we do a literature review? Remember, I said you get maybe 8 articles, 5 of them are good, you actually decide to not even use 3 of them, that's okay. They looked like they were good when you pulled them, but they weren't. You might decide you want to go back and get more information. If none of your articles are good, you might have to go back and look for more information. And if you get in that spot and you feel stuck, feel free to connect with me. I like doing research. I'll help you find good articles, but try it yourself first. It's a good skill to have. All right, so I did a little tiny literature review for you. Yours may be longer than 1 paragraph, but I just did this as an example so you can see what I am talking about when I say a literature review. I found 6 articles about bananas. Literally, I just picked a word out of the air and decided I was going to write about bananas. And I created some questions, which I don't have here. I wanted to know what kind of bananas we eat that we get from the store, and how easy they are to grow. And I don't remember, I think that might have been, and whether I could grow them in Arizona. I think those were the 3 questions that I had, and I threw that stuff up into Google. All right, so I found 6 articles about bananas. In the end, I tossed 2 of the articles because either they were really redundant, and sometimes if you got like 4 articles that say the same thing, 2 of them are really well written and 2 of them are not. I just get rid of the ones that aren't well written. I don't need them. I'm not going to cite them. And who knows if the person doesn't write very well, who knows how, anyway, I got rid of them. Okay, so then I wrote 1 paragraph that incorporated 3 ideas that popped up for me from the 4 articles I had left. That incorporating information from all 4 articles into 1 or 2 or 3 paragraphs, however many paragraphs you need to cover your topic, is called synthesizing. All right, so synthesizing is just taking information from different places and working it into a little bit of a story. Okay, so here's what I learned from 4 articles. Most scientists agree that the Cavendish banana is in danger of extinction because of 2 diseases that it is susceptible to. It turns out actually that the Cavendish banana is the banana that we are all eating. If you go into any grocery store, whether it's Chiquita or some other brand, it is a Cavendish variety or varietal of banana plant that we are eating. That's what we eat in the West. There may be other places where they eat other kinds of bananas, but we always eat Cavendish bananas. All right. So what I learned is the Cavendish banana is in danger, which is important, right? Because they sell so many of them and we eat so many of them, that there are these 2 diseases that are threatening to wipe them out. And I learned that from all the articles I read, even the 2 I threw out. So that was the recurring theme, that these bananas are in danger of extinction from diseases. So that's what I'm going to start with. That's a piece of knowledge I didn't have before, and probably my readers don't have it either, and I'm going to put it out there. Now I found 2 really interesting pieces of information. One of them is that obviously scientists are working on this problem, and some scientists in France identified the Cavendish banana's genome sequence. So that was one cool thing. And then another group of scientists, I don't remember where they were developing tools to use the gene sequencing information and identify disease-resistant genes and then modify the Cavendish varietal to help protect it. So there's a lot more that I read, but I'm not writing you a whole article. I'm just writing you my literature review. From the 4 articles, I learned 3 things. 1, the banana variety that we eat is susceptible to extinction. 2, somebody found the genome sequencing. And 3, somebody else is learning how to use that genome sequencing in order to protect the bananas that we like. Okay, I got 3 ideas out of 4 articles, and I turned them into 1 paragraph. Now, I want to just point out something. Here and also in the information on Canvas, you will notice that there are some words in blue, okay? This is, oops, I'm telling you. This is just my notes to you that there's the theme, and here's the added piece of information 1, and there's another one behind my picture that you can't see that's the added piece of information 2. Last semester I had a lot of people who actually put in this note, here's your theme. here's your idea 1, here's your idea 2. You could do that if you want, but it is not necessary. I just did that so that you could see what I was doing. Hopefully you understand that I took 4 articles and I found 3 ideas and I wrote them up into 1 paragraph. You might have more information than I do because you are chasing down information on 2 or 3 questions. And that's okay. Your literature review might be one paragraph like mine, or it might be 6 paragraphs. It just depends on what you learned and how you write it up. Okay, so you're done. You've read all your secondary research. You've synthesized it into a literature review, and now you need to do your primary research. Okay, remember that's personal interviews, focus groups, observing activities, and things like that. Why are we doing primary research? It's to make your report relevant for today, or to your community or your industry or your job experience or even to your personal life. Talking to people who are actually doing a thing or interacting with in a situation or working in an area adds depth and authenticity, and it's not just a generalization. Remember, even when we synthesized, we took ideas and we had to generalize them for the paragraph. It's people who can tell you what it's really like to do that work or to be in that space, right? So you're bringing the voice of people who are actually affected by your topic to your work in the area, which is why primary research is so important. You only need to do 1 piece of primary research. You can do more if you want. If you know 3 coaches and that's your thing, you know, you could go out and talk to all 3 of them, but if you only know 1 or you only want to do 1, I'm only requiring 1. I just want you to get the idea of the difference between secondary research and primary research, and so I'm requiring a piece of primary research. Don't forget that you need to cite your primary research as well. If you don't know how, look it up. Okay, so now you've done your lit review. You have done your primary research, whatever it is. It's time to write up your paper. This is something from Canvas, and I just wanted to highlight this one thing. Whenever you write something, It is really good if you start your paper with a statement about the thing that is the most interesting, the reason why you actually picked this topic, the thing that you think will grab your reader's attention. All right, so start right there. That's going to be your opening introduction. Then you're going to plop in your literature review and then do a transition like you would in any paper and go from there. Okay, I'm not going to tell you what should be in the body of your report. You can go over all of this information. This right here is just the smallest bit of information that is in Canvas for you, but let's just address a couple of things that are common for students to do in their papers so that you have an idea. All right. So there are really more than 2 ways to write a paper, and if you have a third or fourth way, I'm cool with it. I am just telling you the 2 ways right now that most students write their paper, and I want you to know that either thing is okay. All right, so maybe you have a big idea, and that's why you picked the topic. You have thoughts about it, or you have your own big idea about it. That's great. You can use the paper to write up your own ideas, and you need to, though, bring in the secondary materials and your primary research information that you collected and talk about it in the context of your own ideas. Usually when you have an idea, these materials will give you information about why your idea is good or where your idea maybe needs to be adjusted. So talk about your idea. Why is it important? Why are you sold on it? And then use the secondary resources and the primary research you've done to contextualize what you are writing and to talk about how it affirms your ideas or makes you rethink them and how. All right, so that's if you have some big idea and you want to write about it. I'm good with that. I like that. It's creative, it stretches our minds, and it gives me a window into your brain. However, many students just write the whole paper kind of similarly to the way they write the literature review. They just tell us about the topic throughout all the ideas that they have learned doing their research, primary and secondary, and then synthesizing all of it and comparing maybe what you learned from your secondary sources and what you discovered when you were out there doing your primary research, and then drawing conclusions from your research rather than inserting your own ideas. So, for example, with my example of volunteer coaches, it might be that I've talked to 3 coaches and I've read all this material that I found online, and in the end, one of the things that I conclude, not because I made it up or it was my idea, but because it seems to be something that everybody agrees with, is that coaches really need to be, trained in emotional intelligence around interfacing with kids, and they also need to be thoroughly screened and have fingerprinting and all that other kind of thing. So maybe I do all this research, and what I learn that we should definitely take away is something about the need for emotional intelligence when dealing with kids and something about safety stuff. And so I talk about that in my paper, and then in the end I summarize these are the 2 most important things that I learned. And that's that. You don't have to have your own ideas if you don't want to. You just say what you've learned by doing all this research, and everybody will learn along with you. So either of these ways is fine. If you have a third way, be my guest. Now, let's talk about citation, because since we are doing research and we have sources and we talked about how to cite them before, I want to talk about how to use the citations with your actual report. Inside the text of your report, you have to say when an idea came from somebody else, even if it's not a direct quote. If it's somebody else's idea, you have to say where you got the idea, but you don't want to put the whole citation because they're too long and they disturb people as they're reading. So instead, in the body of your report, you put a short citation. All right, so this first thing here, remember the Cavendish banana? Here is the first sentence from my literature review, and you will see that there are 2 sources cited there, Rothman and Sturgiopoulos. I hope I said that right. Okay, so Rothman 2006 is one of those citations, and that's a short citation. It's just the name of the author and the year. But if I was interested in learning more about what that sentence said, I would not be able to easily find the right article just by using Rothman's name and the year. And that's because there are probably more than one Rothman writing about all and any kind of things and publishing some stuff in 2016. So at the end of your report, you are actually going to put all of your citations in alphabetical order. After you have finished your report, it goes at the very end. All right, so what does that look like? There it is. There are your long citations right here. Rothman M., I don't know what his first name was. I think it was Maury. And he was a producer, not a writer, 2016. I'm not sure why it says he's a producer. It was actually an online multimedia thing that had both writing and a video. And it was called Inside the Fight to Save the Bananas We Know and Love. It was on PBS NewsHour. And here is the link that if you clicked it would take you right to the show. All right, and the second author, the short site, Sturgiopoulos 2016. There were actually 3 authors. Here is the name of the article, and here is the link to the place where I got it, and that is how APA cites those kinds of websites where I found those things. Those things go at the end. Now, if I want to look up the Rothman article, I can go to the end of the paper, find the whole name of it. Right there is the link, but if for some reason there wasn't a link there, I could still know the name of the source, and I could plug it and Rothman in, and no doubt it would pop up for me, so I could go find it. So I just need you to know that you have to put short citations in the body of your paper and the long ones at the end. Why do we even need the short citations? Sometimes students turn in a paper that doesn't have any short citations in the body, just all these long citations afterwards. How do I know if there's no short citation after what Rothman wrote? How do I know which part of the paper was written by which of these people that are cited at the end? I won't. So you need both. The short citation right after you are talking about somebody's ideas and the long citation at the end. We're almost done, I promise you. Okay, now you're done with your report. You've done your bibliography. It's done. And you can turn it in. You are not done because now you have to go after everybody's posted their reports and find your classmate who you have decided you are going to critique their report, and you are going to pull up the report and read it. You have 2 pieces that you have to do and turn in for them. But first, before I tell you what that is, let me tell you what a critique is. A lot of people hear the word critique and they think that they're supposed to be critical. Well, in a sense they are, but critical has more than one meaning. We loosely use it in common talk to talk about being critical of somebody, disapproving, or being negative about something. But in this context, being critical just means, it doesn't necessarily mean being negative. It means thinking about what's in front of you and asking yourself whether the information is relevant. Did they actually answer the questions that they set out to ask? Was it interesting? Was it meaningful? And to look at the research and the information that was contributed, and to see whether or not you really feel like they did a good job of getting their ideas across, getting their questions answered, and so forth. Okay. You might also want to take a look at the quality of their writing and all that kind of stuff. All of that factors into your critique. Okay, so you have 2 ways that you have to critique, and you must do both. I have given you a form. It is in the module. It is also in that area that I showed you the research under this section where we are now. And the top part of the page is this rubric. And for example, you're going to look at the content that your classmate wrote, and you're going to ask whether the meaning of everything they wrote is clear and understandable, or whether most of the content is understandable, but there are places where the meaning is unclear, or unfortunately it's difficult to follow the author's meaning. And you're going to, in each of these questions, content, quality of research, and all the rest of the ones down that column, you're going to answer those questions. I've given you boxes you can check. But that's the things that I'm asking you to look for. if you see this other little piece right here where it says personal feedback, I've given you a bunch of prompts, and you don't have to answer them all. You can pick the prompts that apply for you and give personal feedback. For example, the part I liked most is, or I would have liked to know more about whatever you would have liked to know more about, etc. And so please be sure to do both of those sections. And that and then turn those in. Okay, that is it. This is 35 minutes, and I apologize for that. If you have questions, put them on the discussion board if you think a lot of people would be interested. If it's personal or you don't think anybody else would be interested, go ahead and email me. And I look forward very much to reading these things, and I hope that this has been helpful.